our desire for change, for how we want things to be different. That's our vision for the future. And first steps, the action we take toward our vision for the future. Welcome back to Life from Within. I'm your host, Kelly Dwyer. Today, we're going to talk about how personal change or transformation occurs. I'm in the business of transformation. I'm a coach. I help people make important changes in their lives, in their careers. Changes like the way a person's leading, helping them move from being a scattered leader to being one who thinks strategically and shows up with executive presence. A leader who moves away from abrasive behaviors and starts to demonstrate more effective interpersonal grace. Or moving from being a corporate leader to stepping out and becoming an entrepreneur. All of these are meaningful inflection points in a person's career, and they impact their overall trajectory. To explore how change occurs, we're going to look at one of my favorite transformation frameworks that I use when coaching clients. And I'm going to introduce an update that I think is sorely needed for the framework to continue working in today's times. Okay, a word about frameworks. The first few weeks of business school, professors kept talking about frameworks, framework this, framework that. And I'll admit at first, I wasn't quite sure what they were talking about. Eventually, I caught on and I came to understand that a framework is simply a structured thinking aid. It's a way of analyzing a situation to better understand it. And when we better understand what it is we're facing, it becomes easier to make decisions about what to do next. It's like the hamburger method that we all learned in school for how to write an essay. You have your top bun, which is your intro. Then you have your meat patty or your veggie patty in the middle for the points that you're trying to make about this topic. And then you have your bottom bun, which is your conclusion. That's a framework. It takes an overwhelming task of a blank page, and it gives you a structured tool to organize your thoughts. That brings us to the transformation framework I want to share with you today. It's a classic business framework called the Beckhard-Harris Change Equation. This equation says that intentional change in someone's career or personal life only occurs when they become aware of the dissatisfaction they have with their current situation. Then they get clear on what they desire instead, and they begin to take action toward that desired end state. The cumulative force of all of this, their sense of dissatisfaction, their vision for the future, and their action toward their desired state must be greater than the resistance they have to that change. To see what this actually looks like in real life, imagine Sarah. She's a leader. Sarah's a departmental manager who wants to become a strategic executive sometime in the future. So she needs to start demonstrating some of that behavior now. Her dissatisfaction is that she's working 60 hours a week. She's drowning in emails. She's constantly firefighting, and she's completely exhausted. Her vision is a future where she spends her Fridays doing high-level strategic work while her capable team handles day-to-day operations. Her first step is to block out just 2 hours on her calendar next Tuesday for deep work and set her status to do not disturb. But then her resistance shows up Monday afternoon, Tuesday morning. Her brain starts screaming, I don't think I can do this. If I don't answer all of these emails in 5 minutes, people will think I'm not around. I'm not attending to things. I need to control things. If I'm not here, it's all going to fall apart. For Sarah to actually keep that calendar block, her dissatisfaction, which is her exhaustion, her desire for freedom to think, which is her vision, and that 2-hour boundary, which is her first steps, multiplied together, need to be emotionally stronger than her fear of letting go of control, which is her resistance. Or we can look at Samuel. He's a corporate leader who dreams of launching his own consulting business. His dissatisfaction, he's tired of corporate politics and feeling like a cog in a machine. His vision, total professional autonomy, picking his clients, building something of his own. And his first step is writing down a list of 5 people in his network he could reach out to for an informational coffee chat. Maybe they're people who are doing what he wants to do. Maybe they're potential consulting clients, but he doesn't do that. Why didn't he take the time for that one simple step? Because resistance stands in the way. Resistance is the comfort of his steady biweekly paycheck, the prestige of his title, the fear of the unknown, the fear of failing potentially. Change for Samuel is only going to happen when the dissatisfaction with the status quo, the emotional pain he's in, and the strength of his vision, what he wants to create, becomes stronger than his fear of the change, his fear of the unknown, his fear of failing, his fear of letting go of comfort. Now, this classic formula has worked for a long time and it looks great on paper. But here's where the model breaks down in the real world today, and I believe it urgently needs an update for our times. The concept of this change equation was originally created in the 1960s by management consultant David Gleicher, and then it was popularized in the 1970s and 1980s by Richard Beckhard and Reuben T. Harris in their book, Organizational Transitions, Managing Complex Change. 1960s. That's almost 65 years ago. A lot has changed in 65 years. The pace of technology and external disruption has accelerated to a breakneck pace. And because the world is moving so fast, the level of chronic stress we carry in our bodies and brains today is vastly higher than it was when the formula was written 65 years ago. Modern stress breaks the old formula. The science says when we are stressed and dissatisfied, our brain's rational part, our decision-making, our executive functioning shuts down. Our limbic system takes over. It defaults to old, deeply paved neural pathways. Think about it. When you're stressed at work, you don't show up as your highest, most innovative self. You default to the version of you that learned how to survive in childhood. If you learned back then how to hide when an adult was upset, today you'll withdraw and stay quiet in a high-stakes meeting instead of speaking up. Or maybe your childhood default wasn't flight, it was fight. If you grew up in an environment where the adults weren't reliable or capable, maybe you had a sick parent, you might have learned that the only way to stay safe was to take control and do it all yourself. There was no one else to do it. Fast forward to today. Under work or career stress, that fight response turns you into a hyper-independent bulldozer at times. You refuse to ask for help, you reject collaboration, or maybe you barrel ahead without getting buy-in from your team because your primitive brain is whispering, if I don't control every single variable, I'm not safe. These old survival strategies become our deepest blocks to change. To be honest, I think the classic formula needs an update for our fast-moving, stressful modern times. And I am going to do it. I'm adding a variable to the equation, agency. Simply put, agency is your personal capacity for action. This is about your internal personal power to choose whatever you do next with whatever hand you've been dealt. If agency is missing in the equation, then the potential of change is never realized. You may procrastinate, fall into analysis paralysis, be beaten back by your internal self-talk. Ultimately, without agency, you fail to take action. Here's a small example. Let's say you get an idea to text a particular person in your network about a recent social post they put up. You had a warm and positive thought about them as a result of reading that post, and you want to share that with them. And at a meta level, you want to nurture the relationship because you care about that relationship and you want it to sustain. You think there's mutual benefit to be had. But your resistance shows up in the form of negative self-talk. They didn't respond to my last outreach. They must think in some way that I'm unworthy of their attention. So you can combat that negative self-talk and return to self-agency by asking yourself, what data points do you have that refute that line of thinking? What other times has someone eventually reached out to you and said, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry, I didn't get back to you. When can we catch up next? Or the last month has been bananas. I'm sorry it's taken so long to get back to you. This helps you reconnect with your capacity for action. This helps bring you back to agency. If I believe this person not getting back to me from my last message is not a reflection of my worthiness, then there's nothing stopping me from following through on the idea of texting them again to say what I want to say about how their recent social post positively impacted me. Or maybe you're a person who takes action, but the actions are hollow. You're taking action from an energetic place of, this isn't going to work anyway. So it's a self-fulfilling prophecy designed to fail. It's the client who gives indirect feedback to their colleague because they just know nothing's going to change. So why risk feeling vulnerable and being direct and asking for what they need from this person? Or the person who lets massive uncertainty around AI and the economy rattle them, so they take rushed, uninspired, half-hearted action to find a new role. And when they get rejected or ghosted, they say, see, everything's doomed. There's no point in trying. When we aren't intentionally building our agency, we spend our time looking for evidence to support our fears. We spend our time focused on what is out of our control instead of focusing on what is in our control. By including agency in this equation, we add a variable designed to tune our capacity for action so that we take our first steps from a place of greater resourcefulness, from a place of greater faith, confidence, ease. By attending to our bodies, our brains, and our perspectives, we unleash the inner strength we need to take productive action toward change. Another way I like to look at this is from the perspective of the forces of change. If you're on YouTube, you can see the image that I'm sharing. If you're not, I'll link to it in the show notes. In a change process, there are three forces at play: pushing forces, pulling forces, and restraining forces. Our dissatisfaction with the status quo is a pushing force. We want to get away from what's causing us distress. We feel emotional pain and we want it to stop. What prevents us from moving away from that dissatisfaction and toward change is the resistance. That could look like the golden handcuffs of a steady paycheck or the fear of looking like a failure if we try something new. On the other side, we have two pulling forces: our desire for change, for how we want things to be different. That's our vision for the future. And first steps, the action we take toward our vision for the future. I see agency as an empowering force. It's not a pulling force on its own, but it's a necessary calibration that enables us to take productive action. Remember, we're in an environment these days where the rate of change is so fast that our nervous systems can't keep up. So we need to calibrate. We need to calibrate our nervous systems. We need to calibrate our perspectives so that we can combat the weight of the stress and return to a place of resourcefulness. This makes our action more productive. This makes change more likely. Agency is fueled by two things. One is attunement. This is the attuning of the nervous system. That allows us to turn down the radio station future doom, or turn down the radio station past regret, and helps us move back into a place of neutrality. Agency is also fueled by perspective shifting. Perspective shifting is about moving from the victim story to factual reality and playing with the volume knob of the stakes. Often clients come to me with their internal stakes dialed all the way up to life or death. They think a career change means jumping off a cliff without a parachute, so they stay paralyzed. My job is to help them dial the stakes down so they can begin to see their situation more objectively. This frees them up to start experimenting their way toward their desired future. I recently facilitated a team whose clients are other departments, internal departments, and there is some long-standing tension and resentments between departments. That is a gnarly problem to try and unwind. Without helping the players involved return to a sense of agency, there was going to be no movement toward increased harmony or toward resolving the problem. So I ran them through a perspective shifting exercise, and each person on that team got in touch with the underlying feeling that they had. They moved through a variety of perspectives on the situation. They found greater objectivity, and each person identified one small step that they could take to begin to move toward improved relations. Remember, the only person we have control over is ourselves. Other times people come to me and they're in comfortable misery. And they actually need to dial up the stakes to realize that staying stuck and not moving away from their dissatisfaction is a gamble with their limited time on earth. I've coached leaders who think staying in a soul-crushing corporate job is the safe and responsible choice because it's predictable. It is that. But dialing the stakes up helps them see that they are also paying an invisible tax every single day. It's forcing them to realize that the chronic stress of that safe job means they're showing up to the dinner table completely depleted, irritable, and emotionally unavailable for their partner and their kids. Suddenly, the stakes aren't just about a paycheck anymore. The stakes are, am I willing to trade my health and my children's childhood for a sense of comfort? Or the departmental leader who's coasting in a stagnant company. They want to step up, but it's easier to just stay put for another 3 years. Dialing the stakes up means looking at the reality of the current market and realizing that in a world driven by fast-paced tech and disruption, standing still is actually moving backward. If your company isn't growing and you aren't sharpening your strategic edge, you aren't playing it safe, you're actually making yourself less marketable with every year that passes. The cost of your inaction is your future career sovereignty. So agency is about increasing our capacity for action. It's about attuning our bodies and brains. It's about perspective shifting. One of the things I love most about coaching is to see momentum begin to take root in a person's quest for change. So we vision together what their future desire end state is. We get clear on what their current status quo is costing them. I help them step into greater agency. They design and take first steps. And as they take first steps, it provides feedback, data, information for their vision. So their vision becomes sharper. And so what happens is the force, the pulling force begins to strengthen. And this softens the resistance. The resistance begins to shrink. And eventually, change occurs. Okay, now I've shared with you one of my favorite transformation frameworks. And in fact, we've updated it for our modern times. I'm going to call the update the Life from Within Change Formula, by the way. If you are curious about how to apply this to your own situation, reach out. We can have a conversation. Go to kellydwyer.co, click on contact, and you can either send me a message or you can book a 20-minute intro call. Thanks for listening. I look forward to talking with you. See you next time on Life from Within.